Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the human ship, Perseverance, watching the massive space station grow larger on the main screen. Nexus Prime Station looked like a crystal flower floating in space, its many arms reaching out in different directions. Each arm belonged to a different alien race that ruled the galaxy. The year was 2387, and humans had been part of the Galactic Council for 50 years, but they were still treated like children who needed to be watched. While other races controlled trade routes and owned entire star systems, humans were only allowed to mine asteroids and build simple machines. Elena had served in the human fleet for 20 years. She had seen how the aliens looked at them during council meetings. The Zalari, who looked like walking crystals, always spoke slowly to humans as if they were too stupid to understand normal speech. The Kithara were worse. They shared one mind across billions of bodies, and they thought humans were broken because each person had their own thoughts. The worst were the Luminarch. These beings were made of pure energy and lived for thousands of years. They acted like humans were pets that had just learned to walk on two legs. "Captain, we're getting a signal from the station," said Lieutenant Torres from the communication station. "Put it on screen," Elena replied. The image showed Ambassador Chen Wei, Earth's representative to the Council. He was smiling, but Elena could see worry in his eyes. Chen had been dealing with the aliens for 10 years, and the job had made him look much older. "Elena, good to see you," Chen said. "I need you to dock at Bay 7. We have interesting news from the Council." Elena nodded. "On our way, Ambassador." As the ship moved toward the docking bay, Elena thought about how much had changed since first contact. When the aliens arrived at Earth 50 years ago, humans had been excited. Finally, they would join a galaxy full of advanced civilizations and learn amazing new technologies. Instead, they found a galaxy ruled by fear. The Council kept strict control over everything. New species were only allowed small roles until they proved they could be trusted. The problem was that the tests seemed impossible to pass. The docking process took 30 minutes. Elena left her first officer in charge and took a small team to meet with Ambassador Chen. The inside of the station always amazed her. The walls seemed to be made of liquid light, and gravity worked differently in each section to make the various alien species comfortable. They found Chen waiting in his office, a small room that felt very human compared to the rest of the station. Real wooden furniture from Earth sat next to alien technology that could probably power entire cities. "Sit down, Elena," Chen said. "We need to talk about Earth's future." Elena took a seat across from his desk. "That sounds serious." "It is." Chen activated a privacy screen that would stop alien technology from listening to their conversation. "The Council has made us an offer. They want to invite Earth into the Inner Circle." Elena's eyes widened. The Inner Circle was the real power in the galaxy. Only the oldest and most trusted species belonged to it. They controlled the best technology and the richest worlds. "What's the catch?" she asked. Elena had learned that aliens never gave anything for free. Chen sighed. "They want us to surrender our military fleet, all of it. They say it's a requirement for joining the Inner Circle. We need to show that humans have moved beyond violence and warfare." "That's insane," Elena said. "Every species needs to defend itself." "That's what I told them," Chen replied. "But they insist. They say the Council will protect all human worlds and colonies. We won't need weapons anymore because we'll be part of the galactic peace." Elena stood up and walked to the window. Outside, she could see ships from dozens of different species. Some were traders, others were Council warships. The alien vessels all looked smooth and perfect, like they had been grown instead of built. Human ships were different. They looked crude and ugly compared to alien designs, but Elena knew they were tough. Human engineers built things to last and to work even when everything went wrong. "There's more," Chen continued. "They want to hold the signing ceremony on Earth. They say it will show the galaxy that humans are ready to take their place among the civilized species." Elena turned back to face him. "When?" 3 weeks from now. All the major council leaders will come to Earth. It will be the biggest diplomatic event in human history." Elena felt something cold in her stomach. "Ambassador, doesn't this seem too good to be true? Why now? Why are they suddenly willing to trust us? Chen was quiet for a long moment. I've been asking myself the same questions, he said. But Elena, this is our chance. If we don't take it, humans might stay stuck in these small roles forever. Our children and grandchildren would never see anything beyond mining ships and factory worlds. What do our military leaders think about giving up the fleet? They're not happy, Chen admitted. Admiral Knox especially. She keeps talking about backup plans and hidden threats. But the politicians back on Earth see this as our path to the stars. Elena knew Admiral Knox. Sarah Knox had fought in the border wars 20 years ago when pirates tried to attack human colonies. She was smart and careful, the kind of person who always expected the worst. What do you need from me? Elena asked. I need you to take a message back to Earth. Tell them the Council is serious about this offer. Tell them we have a real chance to change humanity's future. Elena nodded, but she still felt worried. I'll deliver the message, but Ambassador, promise me something. What? If something goes wrong, if this turns out to be a trap, promise me you'll call for help immediately. Chen smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Elena, what could go wrong? We'll be surrounded by the most powerful beings in the galaxy. They're offering us everything we've dreamed of. 2 hours later, Elena was back on her ship, preparing for the jump to Earth. As they pulled away from the station, Lieutenant Torres approached her. Captain, I've been monitoring alien communications, he said quietly. There's been a lot of coded traffic between the Council ships, more than usual. What kind of traffic? I can't decode it, but the pattern looks like military coordination. Signals, like they're planning something big. Elena stared out at the stars. In 3 weeks, the most powerful aliens in the galaxy would gather on Earth to welcome humans into their inner circle. It should have been the greatest day in human history. So why did it feel like a trap? Torres, send a coded message to Admiral Knox, Elena said. Tell her we need to talk as soon as we reach Earth. And Torres? Yes, Captain? Make sure that message uses our most secure channels, the kind the aliens can't monitor. As the Perseverance jumped into hyperspace, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that humanity was about to face its greatest test. The aliens were offering everything humans had wanted since first contact. But Elena had learned to trust her instincts, and right now, those instincts were screaming that something was very wrong. The galaxy was full of species that had trusted the Council completely. Most of them now spent their lives working in alien factories or mining dangerous asteroids. Their homeworlds had become vacation spots for Council members. Elena just hoped that Earth wouldn't join that list. 3 weeks later, Geneva was full of reporters and diplomats from around the world. The signing ceremony would take place in the rebuilt United Nations building, and every major human leader had come to witness what they called the most important day in human history. Ambassador Chen Wei stood on the platform wearing his best diplomatic uniform. Next to him were 3 alien representatives. The Zalari delegate looked like a walking diamond, its crystal body catching the light and throwing rainbows across the ceiling. The Kythera representative was smaller, but Chen knew it was connected to billions of other Kythera across the galaxy, all sharing the same thoughts. The Luminarch delegate was the most impressive. It looked like a person-shaped star, its energy body glowing with soft white light. When it spoke, its voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. Today marks a new beginning, the Luminarch said. Humanity will join the civilized races of the galaxy. You will leave behind your violent past and embrace a future of peace and cooperation. The crowd applauded. Chen smiled and nodded, but something felt wrong. The alien seemed too eager, too excited about this ceremony. In 10 years of negotiations, he had never seen them show this much emotion about anything. President Martinez of the Earth Federation stepped forward to give her speech. This treaty represents everything our species has worked toward since we first looked up at the stars, she said. We are honored to join the Galactic Council as equal partners. Chen picked up the treaty document. It was written on some kind of alien material that felt warm to the touch. The text was in both human languages and alien scripts. He had read it dozens of times, but now he noticed something strange. The alien text seemed to have more symbols than the human translation. Looked up at the Luminarch delegate. Before I sign, could we review the terms one more time? The energy being flickered slightly. Of course. Humanity will surrender all military vessels to Council control. In exchange, your species will receive full protection and access to advanced technologies. Your people will be relocated to worlds better suited to your needs. Relocated? President Martinez stepped forward. That wasn't part of our discussions. The Zalari delegate made a sound like breaking glass. All new council members must be properly integrated. Surely you understand. Chen felt his heart beating faster. The treaty I reviewed said humans would keep control of their homeworlds. There must have been a translation error, the Kithara said. Its voice was flat and emotionless. The council version is the official document. Before Chen could respond, every communication device in the building started beeping at once. Security guards grabbed their radios and President Martinez's assistant ran over with an urgent message. Madam President, the assistant whispered, we're detecting massive alien fleets throughout the solar system. They just decloaked. Chen watched the aliens' faces. None of them looked surprised. The Luminarch's glow grew brighter. The transition must begin immediately. For your own safety, of course. Outside, air raid sirens began wailing across Geneva. Through the tall windows, people could see alien ships appearing in Earth's sky. They were huge dark vessels that blocked out the sun. President Martinez stepped away from the podium. This is not what we agreed to. You agreed to join the council, the Zalari said. Its crystal body was changing color, shifting from clear to deep red. The terms are non-negotiable. Chen realized they had walked into a trap. The ceremony, the treaty, the promises of partnership. All of it had been lies. The aliens weren't here to welcome humanity into their council. They were here to conquer Earth. Military officers in the audience were already on their radios trying to coordinate a response. But Chen knew Earth's defenses weren't designed to fight an invasion fleet. Most of the human military was spread across mining colonies and patrol routes. The Luminarch raised one glowing hand and suddenly all the human communication devices went dead. The lights in the building flickered and went out, leaving only the alien's energy form to provide illumination. Resistance is pointless, it said. Your species will be relocated to designated worlds where you can serve the Council's needs. Those who cooperate will be treated well. President Martinez stood straighter. And if we refuse? The Kithara answered in its emotionless voice. This protocol has been implemented 47 times. Resistance always fails. Your species will adapt as the others have. Chen felt sick. 47 times. 47 other species had been tricked the same way. The Council's inner circle wasn't a partnership. It was a collection of conquered peoples who had lost everything. But then something unexpected happened. The building's emergency lighting came on, powered by backup generators the aliens hadn't disabled. President Martinez's secure phone started working again, using frequencies the aliens apparently didn't know about. Madam President, came Admiral Knox's voice over the speaker. Are you safe? For now, she replied. Sarah, please tell me you have good news. I do. Protocol blackout is active. Repeat, protocol blackout is active. Chen saw the aliens exchange looks. They didn't understand what that meant. But Chen remembered briefings about backup plans and emergency procedures. The Luminarch's glow flickered with annoyance. Your military cannot help you. We have disabled your communication networks and located all your ships. Admiral Knox's voice came through clearly. Not all of them. On screens around the room, images began appearing. Deep space monitoring stations were picking up new signals. Ships were powering up in the asteroid belt. Hidden bases were coming online. The aliens had found Earth's visible military, but they had missed something much larger. For 50 years, every human military leader had asked the same question. What if first contact was a trick? What if the friendly aliens were actually conquerors, waiting for the right moment to strike? Most politicians thought these concerns were paranoia, but the military had prepared anyway. The Zalari delegate's crystal body was now flashing angry red. Impossible. Our sensors detected all human vessels. You detected the ones we wanted you to find, Admiral Knox replied. The ones we built where you could see them. But humans learned long ago not to put all their eggs in one basket. More screens lit up around the room. Alien communication networks were being jammed by human hackers. Council ships throughout the solar system were reporting system failures. Most shocking of all, several alien vessels were now responding to human commands instead of their own. The Kithara representative stepped backward. How are you doing this? Your technology is primitive. Our visible technology, Chen said, finally understanding. But we've been studying your systems for 50 years, learning from every piece of equipment you let us examine, reverse engineering, everything we could get our hands on. President Martinez smiled grimly. Did you really think humans would spend 50 years in space without improving our capabilities? We just made sure you never saw the improvements. The luminarch was growing brighter, its energy form crackling with anger. It does not matter. We have conquered dozens of species with far greater technology than yours. Maybe, Admiral Knox said over the speaker. But I bet none of them spent their entire history fighting wars against their own kind. None of them had to learn how to win battles when the enemy had better weapons and more soldiers. Explosions began lighting up the sky outside Geneva. The alien invasion fleet was under attack by weapons they hadn't known existed. Human ships were emerging from asteroid hiding spots from behind the moon, from the dark side of Mars. The aliens had expected to fight a few patrol ships and some orbital defense platforms. Instead, they found themselves facing a coordinated, military response that had been planned and prepared for half a century. The Kithara delegate spoke urgently into some kind of communication device, but only static came back. Its connection to the hive mind had been severed. This is Admiral Knox to all Council vessels, came the announcement over every speaker in Geneva. You have 1 hour to withdraw from human space. Any ship that remains will be considered hostile and destroyed. The luminarch turned to face the cameras. You are making a terrible mistake. The Council has resources you cannot imagine. Armies that span the galaxy. Then you better call them, President Martinez said. Because right now, your invasion fleet is losing. The 3 alien delegates rushed toward the door, but human security forces blocked their way. I'm afraid you'll be staying here as our guests, Chen said, at least until we sort this mess out. As the aliens were led away, Chen looked out at the battle raging in Earth's sky. The humans had been betrayed, tricked into lowering their guard. But they had also been prepared. The real question now was what would happen when the rest of the galaxy learned that humanity's military was far more dangerous than anyone had suspected. Admiral Sarah Knox stood in the command center of the Indomitable, a massive warship hidden inside a rotating asteroid in the Kuiper Belt. Around her, dozens of officers worked at control stations that looked nothing like the simple technology humans had shown to the aliens for 50 years. The main screen showed tactical displays from across the solar system. Red dots marked alien ships, while blue dots showed human vessels. What would have shocked any alien observer was how many blue dots there were. Admiral, the Mars Defense Grid is reporting successful intercepts, Commander Roberts said from the weapons station. The alien bombardment force has been neutralized. Sarah nodded. What about the Jupiter mining stations? All protected, ma'am. The aliens never found our hidden defense platforms. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. For 5 decades, humans had played the role of primitive newcomers to galactic civilization. They had acted grateful for scraps of alien technology, while secretly building something the Council had never seen before. A true war machine. The aliens made the same mistake that many species had made when dealing with humans throughout history. They assumed that because human technology looked crude, it was ineffective. They never understood that humans designed weapons to work in the worst possible conditions, not to look impressive. Commander Chen, what's the status of our deep space assets? Sarah asked. The communications officer, no relation to Ambassador Chen, checked his displays. All Ghost Fleet units are reporting ready status. The Wraith and her sister ships are in position near the Zalari home system. The Shadow units are holding station near Kithra Prime. Sarah had spent 20 years planning for this day. While alien species built their ships to be elegant and efficient, Humans built theirs to be invisible and deadly. The Ghost Fleet was made up of vessels that could operate completely silent in space, invisible to alien sensors. Each ghost ship was built inside a hollowed-out asteroid and powered by fusion reactors that produced no detectable emissions. Their weapons were kinetic, kill vehicles, chunks of metal accelerated to incredible speeds that could punch through any known alien defense. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Park from the intelligence station, "we're intercepting alien communications. The Council is in panic. They're calling for reinforcements from their core worlds." "How long until those reinforcements arrive?" Sarah asked. "Best estimate is 72 hours for the nearest Council fleets." Sarah turned to the main tactical display. Earth's immediate safety was secured, but she knew this was just the beginning. The Council ruled through fear and overwhelming force. They would not allow one species to successfully resist their authority. "Execute Phase 2, she ordered. Across human space, sleeper agents who had posed as traitors and diplomats for decades began activating. On alien worlds, humans who had appeared to be simple miners and technicians revealed their true purpose. They had been studying alien technology and mapping critical infrastructure for years. The first target was the Zalari communication network. The crystal beings relied on quantum communication relays that connected all their worlds instantly. Human hackers using AI programs designed to think like computer viruses began infiltrating these networks. Within hours, Zalari military commanders found their orders being changed in transmission. Ships that were supposed to attack human colonies instead received orders to return to base. Supply convoys were redirected to empty space. The Kythera faced a different kind of attack. Their hive mind depended on biological communication networks that spanned entire star systems. Human scientists had spent years studying captured Kythera technology, learning how their collective consciousness worked. Now they used that knowledge to inject false information into the hive mind. Kythera soldiers began receiving conflicting orders. Some units thought they were supposed to retreat, others believed they were supposed to attack their own allies. "Admiral, we're getting reports from the Alpha Centauri system," Commander Roberts announced. "The Luminarch garrison is under attack by our Hammer units." Sarah nodded. The Hammer fleet was humanity's answer to alien energy weapons. Instead of trying to match alien technology, humans had gone in a completely different direction. Their weapons were simple, crude, and absolutely devastating. Gravity bombs that could crush a ship into a singularity. Nuclear-pumped lasers that could cut through energy shields like paper. Swarms of self-replicating hunter-killer drones that could adapt to enemy defenses faster than any living commander could respond. The aliens had spent centuries perfecting elegant solutions to warfare. Humans had spent millennia perfecting ways to kill things efficiently. "Ma'am, the Wraith is reporting contact with the Zalari home fleet," Lieutenant Park announced. On the main screen, a tactical display showed the battle developing near the crystal being's capital world. The Zalari had assembled a massive defensive fleet, hundreds of beautiful ships that looked like floating artworks. The human attack came from multiple directions at once. Ghost ships emerged from the dark spaces between planets, firing kinetic kill vehicles that moved too fast for alien sensors to track. Stealth bombers, invisible until the moment they fired, targeted command ships and communication relays. But the most devastating attack came from something the aliens had never expected. Human ships began broadcasting on frequencies that interfered with Zalari crystalline biology. The crystal beings found their bodies vibrating at frequencies that caused intense pain. "Admiral, the Zalari fleet is requesting permission to surrender," came the report. Sarah considered this. The easy thing would be to accept their surrender and move on to the next target. But she knew that would be a mistake. The galaxy needed to understand that humanity was not just another species that could be conquered when convenient. "Negative," she said. "Continue the attack. I want every alien government to understand that there are consequences for betraying trust." The battle near Zalari Prime continued for 6 hours. When it ended, the crystal being's mighty home fleet had been reduced to floating debris. The survivors were allowed to escape, but only so they could spread word of what they had seen. Similar battles raged across 20 star systems. The Kythera hive mind, confused by human information warfare, lost control of entire fleets. Kythera ships began firing on each other, unable to distinguish between real orders and human deceptions. The Luminarch energy beings discovered that their greatest advantage, their ability to exist as pure energy, was also their greatest weakness. Human weapons specifically designed to disrupt energy fields could literally tear them apart at the molecular level. Admiral, we're receiving surrender requests from 12 different alien governments, Commander Roberts reported. Sarah studied the strategic display. Human forces were winning across the board, but she knew the real test was still coming. The Council's core military, their most powerful fleets and best commanders, were still gathering their forces. Ignore the surrender requests for now, she decided. We need to make sure every species in the galaxy understands what happens when you betray humanity. Send a message to all our fleet commanders. She paused, thinking about the right words. This message would be recorded in history. It would define how the galaxy saw humanity from this point forward. Tell them that the first phase is complete. Now we show the galaxy what humans do to enemies who threaten our families. Around the command center, her officers straightened. They had trained for this day, planned for this moment, but now it was really happening. Humanity was at war with the most powerful civilization in the galaxy, and they were winning. Ma'am, Lieutenant Park said quietly, the alien prisoners from the Geneva ceremony are requesting to speak with you. Sarah almost smiled. The 3 alien delegates who had tried to trick humanity into slavery now wanted to negotiate. They had probably expected humans to accept defeat gracefully, like the 47 other species the Council had conquered. They were about to learn that humans were very different from those other species. Put them through, she said. I think it's time we had a proper conversation about humanity's place in this galaxy. The holographic image of the Luminarch delegate flickered on Admiral Knox's command screen. The energy being that had tried to conquer Earth now looked much dimmer than before, its usual bright glow reduced to a weak shine. Admiral Knox, the Luminarch said, its voice no longer carrying the confident tone from the Geneva ceremony. We wish to discuss terms for ending this conflict. Sarah leaned back in her command chair, studying the alien that had attempted to enslave her species. Just days ago, around the command center, her officers continued coordinating attacks across dozens of star systems. Terms? Sarah said calmly. You tried to conquer my homeworld. You've enslaved 47 other species. And now you want to negotiate? The Zalari delegate appeared on the screen next to the Luminarch. Its crystal body was cracked in several places, probably from the harmonic attacks that had shattered their home fleet. We were following standard Council protocol, the Zalari said, its voice sounding like breaking glass. Integration of new species has always been handled this way. Integration, Sarah repeated. Is that what you call slavery? The 3rd alien delegate, the Kythera representative, joined the conversation. Unlike its companions, it showed no emotion at all. The Hive, mind creature, simply stated facts. 47 species have been successfully integrated into Council society. They provide labor and resources. In exchange, they receive protection and guidance. Sarah stood up from her chair and walked closer to the screen. And what happened to the species that refused integration? The 3 aliens exchanged glances. The Luminarch dimmed even further. They were pacified, it admitted. Pacified, Sarah said. You mean destroyed? Military action was sometimes necessary, the Kythera confirmed. Primitive species often resist civilization. Sarah turned to Commander Roberts. Show them the Proxima situation. The main screen switched to display a tactical view of the Proxima Centauri system. Alien reinforcement fleets had been gathering there, preparing for a massive counterattack against Earth. Instead, they found themselves surrounded by human ships that had appeared from nowhere. The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Alien commanders, trained in elegant space warfare with clear rules and predictable tactics, found themselves fighting an enemy that ignored every convention. Human ships attacked from directions that should have been impossible. They used weapons that violated alien understanding of physics. Most disturbing of all, they coordinated their attacks with a precision that even the Kythera hive mind couldn't match. "Your reinforcement fleet at Proxima has been destroyed," Sarah said. "All 400 ships. The survivors are being allowed to escape so they can spread the word." The Zalari's crystal body flashed angry red. "Impossible. The Council fleet at Proxima was our finest fighting force." Was being the important word, Commander Roberts added. "The debris field is quite impressive, if you'd like to see the detailed scans." Sarah walked back to her chair but didn't sit down. She wanted the aliens to see her standing over them, literally looking down on their representatives. "Here's what's going to happen," she said. "First, you're going to withdraw all Council forces from human space. Every ship, every station, every spy. Second, you're going to release every enslaved species under Council control." The Luminarch brightened slightly with indignation. "We cannot simply abandon the integrated species. They depend on Council guidance." "They'll manage," Sarah said coldly. "Humans did." "Third," she continued, "you're going to provide full reparations to every species you've conquered. Technology, resources, whatever they need to rebuild their civilizations." The Kythera spoke in its flat, emotionless voice. "These terms are unacceptable. The Council will not surrender centuries of established order." Sarah smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. "You seem to think this is a negotiation. It's not. These are our demands. You can accept them, or we can continue demonstrating why resistance is futile." "You cannot defeat the entire Council," the Zalari protested. "We have thousands of ships, millions of troops, resources from hundreds of worlds." "Had," Sarah corrected. "Past tense. Commander Chen, show them the current strategic situation." The screen filled with a galaxy-wide tactical display. Red markers showed Council positions, while blue markers indicated human forces. What shocked the alien delegates was how many blue markers there were, and where they were located. Human ships had somehow appeared in orbit around every major Council world, not just a few raiding vessels but entire fleets. The aliens' home systems were now under human control. "How?" the Luminarch whispered. "Our sensors detected nothing." "Your sensors detected what we wanted them to detect," Sarah explained. "While you were watching our visible fleet conduct mining operations and patrol duties, our real military was spreading across the galaxy. We've been preparing for this war for 50 years. Lieutenant Park stepped forward with a report. "Admiral, the Vega system operation is complete. The Council's main shipyards have been secured." Sarah nodded. "Any casualties among the liberated workers?" "None, ma'am. The former slave species are being evacuated to safety as planned." The 3 alien delegates watched in horror as more reports came in. Across the galaxy, human forces were systematically dismantling the Council's power structure. Slave worlds were being liberated. Council administrators were being arrested. Military installations were being destroyed or captured. "This is impossible," the Zalari said, its crystal body now flashing through multiple colors in distress. "No single species has ever challenged the entire Council. No species has ever had to," Sarah replied. "But humans are different. We've spent our entire history fighting wars, not just against other species but against ourselves. We've learned every possible way to fight, to win, to survive." She gestured to the tactical display. "Your species developed faster than light travel and thought that made you gods. You conquered a few primitive worlds and decided you were destined to rule the galaxy. But you never learned how to fight a real war." Commander Roberts added, "Your tactics are centuries out of date. Your strategies assume the enemy will fight by your rules. Your technology prioritizes efficiency over durability. Human military doctrine is different," Sarah continued. "We assume the enemy is smarter than us, better equipped than us, and has more resources than us. Then we figure out how to win anyway." The Kythera representative was receiving information through its hive mind connection. Its expression didn't change, but Sarah could tell it was getting bad news. "The core worlds report that human ships are demanding surrender," it said. "They threaten to destroy our capital cities if we refuse." "We don't threaten," Sarah said. "We promise. You have 24 hours to begin implementing our demands. For every hour of delay, we destroy one Council military installation. For every day of delay, we destroy one Council world. The Luminarch's energy form was now barely visible. You would commit genocide? Would we? Sarah asked. You tell me, how many species have you wiped out for refusing to surrender? The aliens were quiet for a long moment. Finally, the Zalari spoke. If we agree to your terms, what guarantee do we have that humanity won't simply become the new oppressor? That you won't enslave us as we enslaved others? Sarah considered this question carefully. It was a fair concern, and her answer would be remembered for generations. Because humans remember what it's like to be the underdog, she said. We remember being treated as primitives who needed alien guidance. We remember being offered friendship and receiving chains instead. She leaned forward, looking directly at the 3 delegates. But mostly because we know that what you did to 47 other species was wrong, and humans have this annoying habit of fighting against things we know are wrong. The Luminarch flickered brighter. And if we refuse your terms? Sarah's smile returned, cold and determined. Then you'll learn why every species in human history eventually stopped fighting us. It's not because we're stronger or smarter or better. It's because we never, ever give up. 6 months after the betrayal at Geneva, Ambassador Chen Wei stood in the rebuilt United Nations building on Earth. Through the tall windows, he could see construction crews working on the new spaceport that would serve as headquarters for the Galactic Federation. The old Council station at Nexus Prime had been destroyed, its twisted remains now serving as a memorial to the species who had died under alien rule. The galaxy was a very different place than it had been before the war. The mighty Galactic Council was gone, its fleets scattered, its leaders either dead or in hiding. In its place, something new was being built, something that had never existed in galactic history. Chen walked through the corridors where human and alien diplomats worked side by side. Representatives from dozens of species that had been enslaved by the Council were now free to govern themselves for the first time in centuries. In the main assembly hall, delegates were debating the final details of the Terran Accords, the document that would establish the new order. Unlike the false treaty that had nearly doomed humanity, this one was written with input from every species involved. Chen entered Admiral Knox's temporary office, where she was reviewing reports from across the galaxy. Sarah looked tired but satisfied. The woman who had commanded humanity's military response to the alien betrayal was now overseeing the most complex peacekeeping operation in galactic history. How are things proceeding? Chen asked. Sarah gestured to the displays showing various star systems. Better than expected. Most of the former Council species are cooperating with the transition. The Zalari have agreed to share their communication technology with everyone. The Kithara are helping former slave species establish their own governments. And the Luminarch? Sarah's expression hardened slightly. Still being difficult. Some of their factions are trying to re-establish control in the Outer Rim. They're telling other energy beings that humanity plans to enslave them, like the Council did to biological species. Chen sat down across from her desk. Are you going to take military action? Already have, Sarah replied. The Ghost Fleet is monitoring every Luminarch faction. Any attempt to rebuild the old power structure gets shut down immediately. She pulled up a tactical display showing the Outer Rim territories. Human ships were positioned throughout the region, but they weren't conquering worlds or establishing bases. Instead, they were simply watching. We don't need to rule them, Sarah explained. We just need to make sure they understand that the old ways are gone forever. Chen nodded. This had been the most controversial decision of the war's aftermath. Many human leaders wanted to establish humanity as the new galactic superpower, using their military might to create an empire that would protect Earth forever. Instead, Sarah had chosen a different path. Rather than ruling through fear like the Council had, humans would serve as guardians of galactic freedom. The Vega system reports are interesting, Chen said, looking at the latest intelligence summaries. The former slave species there are building their own defense fleets. Good, Sarah said. That's exactly what should happen. Every species needs to be able to protect itself. This was the core principle of the new Federation. No species would be dependent on others for basic security. No species would be forced to surrender their military forces. Most importantly, no species would ever again face the choice between slavery and destruction. A chime indicated an incoming transmission. The holographic image of President Martinez appeared above Sarah's desk. "Admiral, Ambassador, we have a situation developing. In the Rigel sector," she said. "Some of the former council officials are trying to establish a new government there. They're calling themselves the Restoration Movement." Sarah pulled up star charts showing the Rigel sector. It was far from Earth, near the galaxy's edge, where council control had always been weaker. "What are they promising the local populations?" Sarah asked. "The same thing the old council promised," President Martinez replied. "Protection in exchange for loyalty. They're telling species that without strong central authority, the galaxy will descend into chaos." Chen felt a familiar cold feeling in his stomach. "Are any species listening to them?" "A few," the president admitted. "Mostly ones that benefited from council rule. Species that served as administrators or enforcers." Sarah stood up and walked to the window overlooking Earth's rebuilt capital. In the distance, ships from dozens of different worlds were arriving and departing from the spaceport. Trade was flowing freely for the first time in centuries, but so were ideas and technologies that the council had tried to keep secret. "Sarah," Chen said quietly, "some of the human military commanders are asking if we should just destroy the Restoration Movement before it gets stronger." "I know," she replied. "Colonel Harrison sent me a proposal this morning. Quick strike. Eliminate their leadership, scatter their forces." "What did you tell him?" Sarah turned back to face them. "I told him that we didn't fight a war to free the galaxy just so we could become the next oppressors." President Martinez leaned forward in her holographic image. "But Admiral, if we don't act, they could rebuild the Council's power structure. Everything we've accomplished could be undone." "Maybe," Sarah acknowledged. "Or maybe the species that choose to join the Restoration will learn the same lessons humanity learned. That freedom is worth fighting for, even against overwhelming odds." Chen understood what she was saying, but it felt like an enormous risk. "You're willing to bet the galaxy's future on that possibility?" "I'm willing to bet that freedom is stronger than fear," Sarah said. "The Council ruled for centuries because no one believed they could be defeated. Now every species in the galaxy knows that tyrants can be beaten." She pulled up images from across the Federation. Former slave worlds were rebuilding their civilizations. Species that had been forced to work in alien factories were now developing their own technologies. Most importantly, they were all building their own military forces. "The galaxy has 47 species that remember what slavery feels like," Sarah continued, "plus humans who remember what betrayal feels like. If the Restoration Movement wants to try rebuilding the Council, they'll have to fight all of us." President Martinez looked skeptical. "That assumes the former slaves will fight. What if they decide submission is safer than resistance?" "Then, they'll deserve what they get," Sarah said bluntly. "But I don't think that will happen. Once you've tasted freedom, it's very hard to accept chains again." A new report appeared on Sarah's display. The Proxima colonies, the first worlds liberated from Council control, were requesting permission to establish a joint defense pact with 3 neighboring systems. "See?" Sarah said, pointing to the report. "It's already happening. Species are choosing to work together for mutual protection instead of depending on a central authority." Chen felt some of his worry fading. Maybe Sarah was right. Maybe the galaxy had learned from its mistakes. "What about Earth's role in all this?" he asked. "Do we just watch from the sidelines?" Sarah smiled, and for the first time in months it reached her eyes. "We do what humans have always done best. We help the underdogs." She pulled up a list of requests from across the Federation. Former slave species asking for technology assistance. Newly free worlds requesting help with government structures. Young civilizations seeking advice on military organization. "We share our knowledge," Sarah explained. "We teach them what we've learned about fighting tyranny. But we let them make their own decisions about their futures." President Martinez nodded approvingly. "And if the Restoration Movement becomes a real threat?" Then we remind them why the old council fell, Sarah said. But not as conquerors, as partners, fighting alongside every free species in the galaxy. Chen walked back to the window and looked out at the bustling spaceport. Among the ships arriving today was a Zalari vessel carrying trade goods, a Kithara transport full of former slaves returning to their homeworld, and a small craft from a species Chen didn't recognize, probably one of the many civilizations that were emerging from hiding now that the council was gone. It's working, he said, surprised by his own realization. The Federation is actually working. Of course it is, Sarah replied. It's based on something the council never understood. People don't want to be ruled. They want to be free to rule themselves. As Chen watched, two young beings, one human, one alien, ran past the window, chasing each other in some kind of game. They were laughing together, completely unaware that their species had been enemies just months before. The children don't remember the war, Chen observed. Good, Sarah said. Maybe they'll build something even better than what we've created. Outside in Earth's orbit, the human deep fleet maintained its silent vigil. The ships that had brought destruction to the galaxy's oppressors now served as guardians of its freedom. Admiral Knox's promise had been kept. Humanity would never again allow the strong to prey upon the weak. But as Chen looked out at the peaceful scene below, he realized that Sarah's greatest victory wasn't military. It was proving that power didn't have to corrupt, that strength could serve justice instead of dominating it. The galaxy had learned what happened to those who betrayed Earth. Now it was learning something even more important. What happened to those who earned humanity's friendship? The darkness of space stretched endlessly around the Zaphirian ship Luminous Dawn. Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge, his tall blue form reflecting the soft glow of the control panels. His species had explored the galaxy for 3,000 years, and they had never found anything they could not understand or control. Admiral, called Navigation Officer Yelth from her station. We are detecting something strange ahead. Kethvar moved to look at the main screen. A ship floated in the void, dark and silent. It looked unlike anything in their vast databases. Where Zaphirian ships were smooth and curved like flowing water, this vessel was all sharp angles and brutal lines. Scars covered its hull, telling stories of countless battles. It appears dead, said Science Officer Morkan, studying his readings. No power signatures, no life signs. But the design, Admiral, this is not from any known civilization. The alien ship was massive, easily twice the size of the Luminous Dawn. Its hull was a dark gray metal that seemed to swallow light. Strange symbols were painted along its sides, and weapon ports dotted its surface like the eyes of a sleeping beast. Could this be from the species the scouts reported? Asked Yelth. The ones who call themselves humans? Kethvar nodded slowly. The Confederation had received scattered reports of a new species expanding into this region of space. The reports described them as primitive but aggressive, using crude chemical rockets and simple energy weapons. This ship, however, looked far more advanced than those early reports suggested. Begin standard salvage procedures, Kethvar ordered. We will tow it back to the research station. The scientists will want to study this. As the crew prepared, the tractor beam, something changed. The dead ship suddenly blazed with light. Energy readings spiked across every instrument on the bridge. The crew stumbled backward from their stations in shock. Admiral, Morkan shouted over the noise of alarms. The ship is not dead. It was hiding. On the main screen, the human vessel turned to face them. It moved with smooth, deadly grace despite its size. Lights ran along its hull in patterns that seemed almost like a heartbeat. The strange symbols began to glow with an inner fire. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel Defiant, came a voice over their communication system. The words were translated by their computers, but the tone was clear, calm, professional, and completely unafraid. You have approached a military vessel of the Terran Republic. State your intentions. Kethvar felt his confidence return. One ship against his fleet? The humans were either very brave or very foolish. I am Admiral Kethvar of the Zaphirian Confederation. Your ship appeared to be derelict. We were attempting to render assistance. There was a pause. Negative, Admiral. We were conducting reconnaissance operations. Please maintain your current distance and we will avoid any misunderstandings. Kethvar's pride flared. These humans dared to give him orders? His species had been traveling the stars when most races were still learning to make fire. Human vessel, you will submit to inspection. This sector falls under Confederation authority. Admiral? The human voice replied, still maddeningly calm. I must advise you that we do not recognize Confederation authority over this region. Please withdraw to avoid an incident. The Zaphirian crew exchanged glances. The audacity of these creatures was incredible. Kethvar made his decision. Prepare boarding shuttles. We will take this ship and its crew for questioning. The human captain's response came immediately. Admiral, I strongly advise against that course of action. But Kethvar was no longer listening. The Confederation had never met a species that could stand against them. These humans would learn their place in the Galactic Order. 20 minutes later, the first Zaphirian shuttle attached to the human ship's hull. The boarding team was made up of the Confederation's finest warriors, equipped with the best armor and weapons their technology could provide. They cut through the hull with energy torches and dropped into the ship's corridors. What happened next would be studied by military historians for generations. The human ship's interior was dimly lit. With red emergency lighting, the corridors were narrow and functional, with no decoration or art. Everything was built for war, from the reinforced walls to the blast doors that could seal off sections in seconds. The Zaphirian boarding team moved carefully through the ship, their weapons ready. They had fought many battles and conquered many worlds. They expected frightened primitives hiding in the dark. Instead, they found hell. The humans were waiting for them, not cowering behind barriers or running in panic, but calmly positioned with military precision. The Zaphirians' advanced armor meant nothing against weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics. Their elite training crumbled against enemies, who moved like they had been born for war. The battle in the corridors lasted less than 10 minutes. When the shooting stopped, not a single human had been hurt. The surviving Zaphirians, there were only 3 out of 20, found themselves on their knees with human weapons pointed at their heads. This is Security Chief Williams, came a voice over the communication system. Boarding party neutralized, Captain. No casualties on our side. On the bridge of the luminous dawn, Admiral Kethvar stared at the reports coming from his boarding team in growing horror. His best soldiers, warriors who had never known defeat, had been crushed by what the humans casually called basic security personnel. Admiral, Captain Chen's voice came over the radio again. Your people are alive and unharmed. They will be returned to you shortly. I suggest we end this here before anyone gets seriously hurt. Kethvar felt something he had never experienced. In his long life, fear. Not just fear of death, but fear of the unknown. These humans fought like no species he had ever encountered. There was no rage, no excitement, no passion. They approached violence with the same calm efficiency they might use to repair a machine or file a report. The 3 surviving Zaphirians were sent back in their shuttle, along with their equipment and the bodies of their fallen comrades. They were not harmed, not tortured, not even questioned. The humans simply returned them like broken toys a child had finished playing with. As the luminous dawn retreated, Admiral Kethvar studied the recordings from his boarding team's suit cameras. He watched his warriors die with a growing sense of dread. The humans moved through combat like dancers following ancient steps. Every shot found its target. Every movement had purpose. They killed without hatred and showed mercy without weakness. Admiral, whispered Science Officer Morkan, what are these humans? Kethvar did not answer. He was thinking about the captain's voice, calm, professional, almost bored. She had destroyed his boarding party like it was routine maintenance, and she had let him live to carry the message back to his people. That more than anything else terrified him. The human ship Defiant watched the Zaphirian vessel retreat into hyperspace. On her bridge, Captain Sarah Chen made a note in her log about the encounter. She classified it as a minor diplomatic incident and requested that command send a proper first contact team to establish relations with the Zaphirian Confederation. She had no way of knowing that she had just lit a fuse that would burn across the entire galaxy. The age of human isolation was about to end, and the universe would never be the same. Battle Commander Thexrim had built his reputation on crushing the dreams of lesser species. His fleet had brought order to 17 star systems, and taught respect to countless civilizations that had forgotten their place in the galactic hierarchy. Now, as he studied the report from Admiral Kethvar, his forearms tensed with barely controlled fury. "These humans humiliated our forces," he growled to his staff officers gathered in the war room of his flagship Thunder of Justice. 20 elite warriors defeated by primitive barbarians. It is impossible. Commander Veltar, his tactical officer, shifted nervously. "Sir, Admiral Kethvar's record is beyond question. His reports have always been accurate." Thexrim's red eyes blazed. "Then explain to me how savages using chemical rockets managed to defeat Confederation Marines." He gestured at the holographic display showing the tactical data from the encounter. "Look at these readings. Their ship barely registers on our technology scales." The truth was simpler and more terrifying than Thexrim could imagine, but he was not ready to accept it. In his mind, the humans had gotten lucky. Perhaps they had stolen some advanced weapons, or maybe they had used some crude trick that would not work twice. "We will teach these humans the price of defying the Confederation," Thexrim declared. "Assemble the third battle group. 12 heavy cruisers and our escort fighters. We will capture their ship and bring their leaders back in chains." 3 days later, the largest Zaphirian fleet in a generation dropped out of hyperspace near the edge of human territory. The Thunder of Justice led 11 other warships, each one capable of destroying an entire planet. Fighter squadrons buzzed around them like angry insects, their pilots eager for battle. "Sir," reported the sensor officer, "we have located the human vessel. It appears to be alone." On the main display, the human ship Defiant hung motionless in space. It looked even more primitive up close, its hull scarred and battered from countless battles. Compared to the sleek beauty of the Zaphirian fleet, it looked like a chunk of scrap metal. "One ship," Thexrim laughed. "They send one ship against 12. Their arrogance will be their downfall." He opened a communication channel to the human vessel. "Human ship, this is Battle Commander Thexrim of the Zaphirian Confederation Navy. You have attacked our forces and violated our territory. Surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded." The response came quickly. "This is Captain Sarah Chen. Commander, you are in violation of Terran space. I am ordering you to withdraw immediately." The same human from Kethvar's report. Thexrim smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Captain Chen, you are facing 12 warships with a single vessel. Surely even humans are not too primitive to understand mathematics." "I understand the numbers perfectly, Commander. I also understand that backup is en route. You have one chance to leave peacefully." Thexrim checked his tactical display. The nearest human systems were days away. No reinforcements would arrive in time to help this foolish captain. "You lie, human. Surrender now or we will take your ship by force." There was a pause that seemed to stretch forever. When Captain Chen spoke again, her voice carried a weight that made every Zaphirian on the bridge shiver. "Commander, I gave you a chance. Don't blame me for what happens next." The human ship began to move. What followed would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for centuries to come. The humans called it the 17-minute war, though most of the actual fighting was over in the first 5 minutes. The Defiant did not charge heroically toward the enemy fleet. It did not try to ram the biggest ship or go out in a blaze of glory. Instead, it began a careful, methodical dance of destruction that seemed almost choreographed. The first Zaphirian cruiser died when kinetic kill vehicles, simple chunks of dense metal accelerated to incredible speeds, tore through its shields and hull like they were made of paper. The crew had no time to scream before their ship broke apart. The second cruiser lasted longer, managing to fire several shots at the human vessel before plasma lances, beams of contained stellar fire, melted through its engine core. The explosion lit up space like a newborn star. Thexrim watched in growing horror as his fleet was systematically destroyed. The human ship moved like a predator, never staying in one place long enough for his gunners to get a clean shot. Its weapons fired with impossible accuracy, each shot carefully planned to cause maximum damage. "Return fire," Thexrim screamed. "All ships concentrate fire on that human vessel." His remaining ships tried to obey, but the human captain seemed to know where they would shoot before they did. The Defiant would be gone from a target zone just before the energy beams arrived, appearing somewhere else to deliver another killing blow. The human ship's computer system, what they called an AI, calculated firing solutions faster than any Zaphirian could think. It predicted enemy movements based on tiny changes in engine output and ship positioning. It was like fighting an opponent who could see the future. One by one, Thexrim's proud warships died. Some tried to ram the human vessel in desperate suicide attacks, only to watch their target slip away at the last second, while return fire crippled their engines. Others attempted to retreat, but found their hyperspace drives destroyed by precisely targeted shots. The fighter squadrons fared no better. Their small, fast ships should have been able to overwhelm a single larger vessel, but the human ship's defensive systems were unlike anything they had ever encountered. Point defense weapons tracked and destroyed incoming fighters with mechanical precision, while electronic warfare systems scrambled their targeting computers and communications. In 17 minutes, 11 Zaphirian warships were reduced to drifting wreckage and scattered debris. Only Thexrim's flagship remained, its engines dead and its weapons offline. "Sir," whispered his communications officer, his voice shaking with shock. "The human ship is hailing us." Captain Chen's voice filled the bridge once again. "Commander Thexrim, your fleet is disabled. I am prepared to accept your surrender." Thexrim stared at the tactical display, unable to believe what he was seeing. His entire battle group, the pride of the Confederation Navy, destroyed by a single human ship. His hands shook as he reached for the communication controls. We surrender," he managed to say. "Acknowledged. Do not attempt to restart your engines or bring weapons online. Rescue ships will arrive within 6 hours to evacuate your survivors. Any hostile action will result in the immediate destruction of your vessel." The communication channel closed, leaving Thexrim alone with his shock and shame. Around him, his surviving officers worked frantically to treat the wounded and repair critical life support systems. "Sir," his tactical officer said quietly, "I'm reading the human ship's energy signatures. They never went above 30% power during the entire battle." The words hit Thexrim like a physical blow. They had held back. During the complete destruction of his fleet, the humans had been taking it easy. If they had wanted to, they could have ended the battle in minutes instead of 17. As promised, human rescue ships arrived exactly 6 hours later. They were sleek, efficient vessels that made the Defiant look primitive by comparison. The rescue teams that boarded the Zaphirian survivors were professional and courteous, treating wounded enemies with the same care they would show their own people. Captain Chen herself came aboard the Thunder of Justice to speak with Thexrim. She was smaller than he had expected, a middle-aged human female with graying hair and calm eyes that seemed to see everything. "Commander," she said, "you attacked a military vessel in Terran space. Under normal circumstances, this would be considered an act of war." Thexrim felt his courage return slightly. "Then why do you treat us with mercy?" Chen smiled, and for a moment she looked almost sad. "Because, Commander, you didn't know what you were dealing with. Your people made a mistake based on incomplete information. Starting a war over a mistake would be wasteful." She turned to leave, then paused. "A word of advice, Commander. The next time you meet a human ship, remember this day. We prefer peace, but we are very, very good at war." As the human rescue teams evacuated the survivors, Thexrim realized that Captain Chen had given him the most valuable thing in the universe: a second chance. The question was whether his people would be wise enough to take it. The Grand Council chamber of the Zaphirian Confederation had never been so quiet. 300 representatives from across their empire sat in stunned silence as Battle Commander Thexrim finished his report. The holographic display above the central podium showed the tactical recordings of his fleet's destruction, 17 minutes of systematic annihilation that would haunt every military officer in the room for the rest of their lives. Supreme Chancellor Mordith, ancient even by Zaphirian standards, leaned forward in his ceremonial chair. His voice carried the weight of 3,000 years of civilization. "You are telling us, Commander, that a single primitive vessel destroyed 11 of our finest warships." Thexrim stood straighter despite the shame that burned in his chest. "Yes, Your Excellence. The human ship Defiant, commanded by Captain Sarah Chen, eliminated my entire battle group in 17 minutes and 12 seconds. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some delegates shook their heads in disbelief while others studied the tactical data with growing alarm. "Show us the analysis," ordered Chancellor Mordith. Chief Science Advisor Kelneth activated the detailed breakdown that their best minds had spent weeks preparing. The holographic display shifted to show weapon trajectories, energy readings, and movement patterns. "The humans used kinetic kill vehicles," Kelneth explained, her voice tight with professional fear. "Simple chunks of dense metal accelerated to significant fractions of light speed. Our shields designed to stop energy weapons were useless against them." Admiral Vextar, the Confederation's highest-ranking military officer, studied the data with the eye of a career warrior. "These plasma lance weapons, they cut through our armor like it was not there. And this tactical computer system—" "Artificial intelligence," Thexrim supplied. "They call it an AI. It predicted our movements before we made them. It was like fighting an enemy who could read our minds." The chamber erupted in discussion. Artificial intelligence was theoretical, at best for most Confederation species. The idea that the primitive humans had not only created it but deployed it in combat was almost impossible to believe. "There is more," announced Dr. Yelsif, the Confederation's leading xenobiologist. She had spent the last month studying every scrap of data about human society that their scouts had gathered over the years. "We must understand what we are dealing with." The holographic display changed again, showing images of human worlds, cities, and cultural artifacts. What the assembled delegates saw made their blood run cold. "Humans do not simply fight wars," Dr. Yelsif began. "They have made warfare into an art form. Every aspect of their society, their entertainment, their games, their sports, even their children's toys, revolves around conflict and competition." She showed them images of human entertainment. Movies depicting massive space battles, games where children commanded armies, sports where teams fought for territory and dominance. Everything was competition. Everything was conflict. Everything was war. Their literature is filled with stories of warriors and battles. Their music celebrates both victory and heroic defeat. They study ancient military leaders the way we study philosophers. They teach strategy and tactics to their children as basic education. Admiral Vextar examined footage of human military exercises with the eye of a professional soldier. What he saw made him feel very old and very afraid. They train their warriors from birth. Look at this. Children barely old enough to walk playing games of tactical combat. "It gets worse," Dr. Yelsif continued. "Captain Chen, the human who destroyed Commander Thexrim's fleet, is not considered exceptional by their standards. Her military record rates her as competent but unremarkable. She commands what they classify as an older patrol vessel on routine reconnaissance duty." The silence that followed was deafening. If Captain Chen was unremarkable, and the Defiant was not even a frontline warship, what would happen when the humans sent their best? "How many ships do they have?" whispered Chancellor Mordith. Dr. Yelsif consulted her notes. "Conservative estimates suggest several thousand warships, with production capacity to build hundreds more each year. Their population exceeds 20 billion across dozens of worlds. Every single one of them has been raised in a culture that glorifies warfare." The implications hit the assembled delegates like a physical blow. They were not dealing with a normal civilization that occasionally went to war. They had encountered an entire species of warriors who had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of killing. "There is one more thing," Dr. Yelsif said quietly. "Commander Thexrim, you said the human captain showed you mercy. This is consistent with their military doctrine. They prefer their enemies alive and able to spread word of human capabilities." Admiral Vextar felt a chill run down his spine. "You mean they let us live on purpose to send a message?" "Exactly. Captain Chen could have destroyed Commander Thexrim's flagship in the first minutes of the battle. Instead, she disabled it and provided medical aid to the survivors. This was not compassion, it was psychological warfare." The Grand Council chamber fell into another long silence as the representatives absorbed this information. They had met many species in their 3,000 years of space travel. Some had been peaceful traders, others had been hostile conquerors. But they had never encountered anything like humanity. "What do we do?" asked Delegate Morven from the outer colonies. "How do we defend against an entire race of warriors?" Chancellor Mordeth looked older than his centuries. "We must warn the other civilizations. The Ethereal Collective, the Kronar Empire, the Trade Federation. They all must know what we have discovered." "Will they believe us?" asked Admiral Vextar. Thexrim stepped forward. "They will when they see the recordings. No one who watches these battles can doubt the truth." Dr. Yelsif activated one final display, a map of known space showing human territory as a small cluster of stars near the galactic rim. This is where they are now. A small collection of worlds that most civilizations have ignored. But they are expanding, and when they reach the major trade routes, the unspoken implication filled the chamber with dread. Humanity was like a wildfire that had started in a remote corner of the galaxy. For now, they were contained to their small region of space. But fires spread, and when this one reached the rest of civilization, nothing would ever be the same. "Send the emergency broadcast," Chancellor Mordeth ordered. "Priority 1 communication to all known civilizations. Include the tactical data, the cultural analysis, everything." As the council session ended and delegates hurried to contact their home worlds, one thought dominated every mind in the chamber. The galaxy had a new apex predator, and it was only a matter of time before everyone else became prey. The message that went out that day was simple but terrifying. Warning to all civilizations. New species designated human, encountered in Sector 7 Alpha. Extreme military capability demonstrated. Approach with utmost caution. Avoid hostile contact, at all costs. Within days, that message had spread to every corner of known space. The age of human isolation was ending and the galaxy would never be the same. Some species would try to make contact and secure peace treaties. Others would form alliances against the human threat. A few would simply run. But they would all know the name that Battle Commander Thexrim had learned in 17 minutes of terror. Humanity, the species that had turned war itself into a science. The emergency message from the Zaphirian Confederation spread through the galactic communication networks like a virus. Within 72 hours, every major civilization had received the tactical recordings, cultural analysis, and terrifying warning about humanity. The reaction was immediate and profound. High Ethereal Zeslin of the Ethereal Collective had spent her 300-year lifespan dedicated to peace and harmony. Her people had not built a warship in over a millennium, preferring meditation and philosophical debate to violence. Now, as she watched the recording of the 17-minute war for the 5th time, her graceful hands trembled with unprecedented fear. "Summon the Defense Council," she ordered her aide, her melodic voice strained with emotion. "We must begin military preparations immediately." "Your Radiance," her aide whispered in shock. "The Collective has not had a Defense Council for 8 centuries. "Then create one," Zesalin replied, her ethereal features hardening with grim determination. "Contact our allies in the Peaceful Systems Alliance. Tell them the age of peace is ending." Across the galaxy, the Kronar Empire was having its own crisis of confidence. War Chief Grathak, whose species had conquered 40 star systems through brutal military might, stared at the tactical analysis with growing dread. His warriors were fierce, His ships were powerful, but the humans fought with a precision and efficiency that made his proudest victories look like children playing with toys. "Pull our fleets back from the contested borders," he ordered his generals. "All of them. Now." "War Chief," protested General Thuvran, "if we retreat from the Varian sector, we will appear weak. Our enemies are not the problem anymore," Grathak interrupted, gesturing at the holographic display showing human ship movements. "Look at these recordings. The humans destroyed 11 warships in 17 minutes. 11. Our best victory required 3 days to defeat 5 enemy vessels." He stood and paced the command center, his massive frame radiating anxiety that his subordinates had never seen before. "Send diplomatic envoys to all our border neighbors. Non-aggression. Pacts, trade agreements, anything to avoid conflict. We need to focus all our resources on preparing for the humans." "War Chief, surely you do not believe that one species could threaten the entire empire?" Grathak stopped pacing and fixed his general with a cold stare. "Watch the recording again." "Thuvran, count how many times the human ship could have destroyed the Zaphirian flagship but chose not to. They were playing with their enemies, playing. Now imagine what they could do if they were serious about winning." The Vorthan Trade Federation, masters of commerce and diplomacy, were perhaps the most practical in their response. Within hours of receiving the Zaphirian warning, they had rerouted all major trade routes to avoid human space. Emergency protocols were activated to secure alternate supply lines and establish buffer zones. Chairman Velthar called an emergency session of the Trade Council, his 3 arms gesturing rapidly as he spoke. "The humans represent both the greatest threat and the greatest opportunity in galactic history. We must be prepared for either possibility." "How can they be an opportunity?" asked Trade Minister Kosovan. "They are clearly a military threat. Because if we can establish peaceful trade relations with them, we will be the only civilization with access to their technology and resources. The profits could be enormous. But if we anger them..." Velthar let the implication hang in the Yawant air. The Council immediately authorized the construction of the largest diplomatic fleet in Federation history. Every ship would be unarmed, painted in peaceful colors and loaded with gifts and trade goods. They would approach human space with flags of truce and hopes for profit. Meanwhile, smaller civilizations throughout the galaxy were making their own desperate preparations. The Aquatic Consortium began building underwater cities to hide their population from orbital bombardment. The Silicon-based collective started moving their industrial centers to asteroid fields where they would be harder to target. The Hive Mind collective went into complete communication silence, hoping that the humans would not notice them. Some species attempted to gather intelligence about humanity, sending long-range scouts to observe human worlds from a safe distance. What they found only increased their fear. Human space was bustling with activity. Massive industrial stations churned out new warships at an alarming rate. Military exercises involving hundreds of vessels were conducted regularly. Transport ships moved troops and supplies between worlds with the efficiency of a well-oiled machine. Most disturbing of all, the humans seemed completely unaware of the chaos they had caused. They continued their normal activities: exploration, colonization, trade, as if they had not just become the most feared species in the galaxy. Captain Sarah Chen, the human who had unknowingly triggered this galactic crisis, was back on patrol duty. Her ship, the Defiant, continued its routine reconnaissance missions along the edge of human space. She had filed her report about the 2 encounters with Zaphirian forces and requested that Command send diplomatic teams to establish formal relations. She had no idea that her name was now whispered in fear across 1,000 worlds. The human government, when it finally learned about the galactic reaction from intercepted alien communications, was baffled. President Martinez called an emergency meeting of the Defense Council to discuss the situation. "I don't understand," she said, reviewing the intelligence reports. Captain Chen followed standard protocols. She defended herself against hostile forces and showed mercy to the survivors. Why are they all so terrified? Admiral Thompson, the graying head of Human Defense Command, studied the alien communications with professional interest. "Madam President, I think they're afraid because we're good at what we do. Really good, maybe too good. What do you mean? Look at these cultural analyses they're sharing about us. To them, we look like a species that lives for war. They see our entertainment, our sports, our military training, and they think we're all warriors. Defense Secretary Park nodded grimly. They're not entirely wrong, Admiral. We do spend a lot of resources on military preparedness, and our cultural products do tend to focus on conflict and competition. President Martinez frowned. But that's just human nature. We compete because it makes us better. We prepare for so we can avoid it. Don't they understand that? Apparently not, Madam President. To them, we look like an entire species of soldiers, and after what Captain Chen did to those Zaphirian fleets, Admiral Thompson shook his head. They think we're unstoppable. The irony was not lost on anyone in the room. Humanity had spent centuries dreaming of the day they would make contact with alien civilizations. They had imagined peaceful exchanges of knowledge, cultural understanding, and cooperation among the stars. Instead, their first real contact had terrified half the galaxy into preparing for war. "What's our response?" asked President Martinez. Admiral Thompson pulled up a star chart showing the movements of alien fleets throughout known space. Massive military buildups were visible near human borders. Diplomatic envoys were gathering in neutral systems. Some species were fleeing to the far rim of the galaxy. "We need to move carefully, Madam President. Any aggressive action on our part could trigger a galactic war. But if we appear weak, some of these species might decide to attack us before we become too powerful. So what do you recommend?" Admiral Thompson smiled grimly. "We do what Captain Chen did. We show them that we're reasonable people who prefer peace, but we make damn sure they know what will happen if they choose war instead." As humanity began to prepare for its formal entry onto the galactic stage, the rest of the galaxy held its collective breath. Some species sent peace envoys loaded with gifts and treaties. Others gathered their fleets for what they believed might be the last war in galactic history. But all of them knew that the universe had changed forever. The humans were coming and nothing would ever be the same. 5 years had passed since the Chen incident, as historians now called it, and the galaxy looked nothing like it had before. The massive conference hall on the neutral world of Haven Prime buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from 300 civilizations gathered for the first Galactic Security Summit. At the center of it all sat Admiral Sarah Chen, former captain of the Defiant, trying to understand how a routine patrol mission had somehow made her the most famous human in the galaxy. The Galactic Security Summit had been years in the making. What started as the Human Monitoring Coalition, a loose alliance of terrified species sharing intelligence about human activities, had evolved into something far more complex. As the initial panic faded and no human invasion materialized, the galaxy's civilizations began to realize that humanity might be more opportunity than threat. Chancellor Mordeth of the Zaphirian Confederation, now elderly even by his species standards, stood to address the assembly. His voice carried across the vast chamber through translation devices that rendered his words into hundreds of different languages. 5 years ago, we made contact with humanity under unfortunate circumstances, he began, his eyes finding Admiral Chen in the human delegation. We expected primitives and found warriors. We sought easy conquest and discovered what it meant to fight beings who had turned warfare into an art form. A murmur ran through the assembled delegates. The Zaphirians had become the unlikely leaders of the galactic peace movement, their humbling encounter with humanity having taught them valuable lessons about assumptions and arrogance. But we also learned something else, Mordeth continued. We learned that humans, despite their incredible capacity for war, preferred peace. They could have conquered our worlds after defeating our fleets. Instead, they returned our dead with honor and offered to open diplomatic relations. High Ethereal Zesselin of the Ethereal Collective nodded her graceful head. Her people's forced militarization had been successful, but traumatic. They now possessed one of the largest defensive fleets in the galaxy, but it had cost them much of their peaceful philosophy. The humans have kept their word, she said, her melodic voice reaching every corner of the hall. They have not expanded aggressively. They have not demanded tribute or territory. They have simply existed. And in doing so, they have changed everything. War Chief Grathak of the Kronar Empire, whose species had retreated from their conquests to focus on human-proofing their military, spoke next. The collective is correct. The humans have not conquered us, but they have conquered war itself. Look around this chamber. When was the last time any of us fought each other? It was true. The galaxy had become paradoxically peaceful since humanity's emergence, with the specter of human military might looming over everyone. Smaller conflicts seemed pointless. Why waste resources fighting neighbors when humanity might notice and decide to restore order themselves? Trade had flourished as species focused on technological advancement rather than territorial expansion. Scientific cooperation had increased as civilizations shared research to better understand human technology. Even the most militant species had found themselves embracing diplomacy over warfare. Admiral Chen rose to address the assembly, still somewhat bewildered by her role in these historic events. She was a career military officer who had simply defended her ship when attacked. Yet somehow she had become humanity's unofficial ambassador to the galaxy. I want to thank everyone for their patience as we've learned to navigate this new relationship between our species, she began. I know that first contact didn't go as smoothly as anyone would have liked. A few nervous chuckles rippled through the crowd. The human talent for understatement had become legendary among the galactic community. But I think we've all learned valuable lessons, Chen continued. Humanity values peace, but we prepare for war. We compete because it makes us stronger, but we cooperate because it makes everyone safer. We hope that the galaxy can find room for all of our different approaches to existence. Chairman Velthar of the Vorthon Trade Federation gestured enthusiastically. His people had indeed profited enormously from their early peace overtures to humanity. Human technology and resources had revolutionized galactic commerce. The humans have proven to be our most valuable trading partners, he announced. Their industrial capacity is unmatched. Their scientists are brilliant, and their philosophers offer perspectives we never considered. They have enriched not just our coffers, but our minds. Dr. Yelsif, the Zaphirian xenobiologist who had first analyzed human culture, presented her updated findings to the assembly. Our understanding of humanity has evolved considerably over the past 5 years. While they are indeed a warrior species, they are also explorers, builders, artists, and dreamers. Their capacity for violence is matched only by their capacity for creation. The holographic displays showed human cities, art installations, scientific research stations, and cultural festivals. The galaxy had been so focused on human military might that many had missed their other achievements. Most importantly, Dr. Yelsif continued, we have learned that humans fight only when they must. They prefer to build rather than destroy, to explore rather than conquer, to trade rather than take. They are warriors, yes, but they are warriors in service of peace. Ambassador Telvar of the Distant Worlds Coalition spoke up from the far side of the chamber. Not all species have been as fortunate in their encounters with humanity as those represented here today. The Black Star Raiders found out what happens when you attack human civilian ships. The Void Cult discovered the consequences of targeting human colonies. A sobering silence fell over the assembly. While most first contacts with humanity had ended peacefully, a few aggressive species had chosen to test human resolve. The results had been swift, decisive, and absolute. The Black Star Raiders no longer existed as a military force. The Void Cult had been reduced to scattered survivors hiding in remote systems. But even in those cases, Admiral Chen pointed out, humanity showed restraint. We could have eliminated those threats completely. Instead, we demonstrated overwhelming force once and then offered terms for surrender. Most of their populations survived and were allowed to rebuild under new leadership. President Martinez of the Terran Republic, appearing via hologram from Earth, addressed the assembly directly. Humanity seeks partnership, not domination. We want to explore the galaxy, together, to learn from each other, to build something greater than any of us could achieve alone. The formal treaty that emerged from the Haven Prime Summit established the framework for what historians would later call the New Galactic Order. Humanity would be recognized as the ultimate guarantor of galactic peace. not through conquest or intimidation, but through the simple fact that no rational species would risk war knowing that humans might intervene. In return, humanity agreed to share certain technologies, provide protection for peaceful civilizations, and maintain open, diplomatic relations with all species willing to coexist peacefully. The Galactic Defense Doctrine, as it came to be known, was elegantly simple. Any species that attacked another would face potential human intervention. The mere possibility was enough to deter most conflicts before they started. As the summit concluded and delegates prepared to return to their homeworlds, Admiral Chen found herself surrounded by alien dignitaries wanting to shake hands, exchange gifts, or simply meet the human who had changed galactic history. "Admiral," asked a young Zaphirian journalist, "do you ever regret that first encounter with our forces? Do you wish things had happened differently?" Chen considered the question carefully. Around her, hundreds of species that had once viewed each other with suspicion were now working together on joint projects and shared goals. The galaxy was more peaceful than it had been in centuries. "No," she said finally. "I don't regret defending my ship and my crew. I don't regret showing mercy to survivors, and I certainly don't regret the galaxy we've all built together since then." As the delegates departed Haven Prime, they carried with them a new understanding of their place in the universe. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy through force of arms or economic dominance. They had conquered it through the simple demonstration that they were exactly what they appeared to be, a species capable of terrible war but devoted to lasting peace. The age of human isolation was over. The age of human leadership had begun, and for the first time in galactic history, that leadership was welcomed rather than feared, respected rather than resented. Admiral Sarah Chen, the woman who had started it all with a simple defense of her ship, looked out at the stars and smiled. The universe was vast and full of wonders, and now all of its children could explore it together in peace. The aftermath of humanity's emergence had indeed echoed through the universe, but it was not the echo of conquest or destruction. It was the echo of hope. The hope that even the most different species could find common ground among the stars.